Hi, I'm Mike Bellevue, and as I'm filming this, we're solidly in January, and we've got a raging ice storm outside, so there's no going out, and maybe that's why God created winter, because if it was nice, I'd rather be out shooting or working on the land, but when it's like this, you can't get out, and it kind of forces you into the shop to do chores that you know you ought to do to make your shooting more enjoyable later in the season when the weather's nice. And today, what we're going to be doing is taking this Pietta 1861 Navy replica, and I've had this for a month or two, but I've done nothing with it. And what we're going to do is we're going to get it ready to shoot. Now, outside, right out of the box, you could take these and shoot them pretty well. I mean, quality has really come up quite a bit over the years, but I've got a procedure I go through on all new revolvers. And I've actually videoed it before, but a lot of folks don't go back and look at the archives, and I've got to get this one ready, so I thought I'd film it for you. You can see what I do to smooth up a gun before I take it out in the field. So the first thing we're going to do is take everything apart, and we're going to give it a wash down with acetone to take off the grease that it's packed in, which is something, even if you don't smooth it out, that you're going to want to do. Now, I'm not going to show you the disassembly procedures because you can look up on the site and find my videos that do that in detail. So I'm just going to take it apart, wash the parts in acetone, and then we'll get to work. With maybe just a couple of exceptions, this is what we're going to use to clean up the insides of this revolver. I've got my Turner's pack of emery cloth. If you don't have emery cloth, you can use regular sandpaper, and I back it with duct tape just to give it a little more strength than the regular paper. I've got some springs here that I'm going to be changing out, a set of Slix Shot nipples that we'll install, a Smith & Wesson hand slot file, some stones, and good fitting screwdrivers. And that's pretty much all you need. Well, before I even take the rest of the gun apart, I deal with the cylinder. So I've taken the cylinder and I've removed the factory nipples, cones if you will, using this Track of the Wolf nipple wrench. And I'm going to replace those in a minute, but before I do, I'm going to smooth out the arbor hole. And on these Colt revolvers, of course, this part, which a lot of people would call the base pin, is called an arbor. So the way I do that is pretty simple. I take a dowel, I take double-sided carpet tape, put a layer of that on the dowel, cut a piece of 400 grit sandpaper, and the procedure is pretty simple. I'm just going to put the cylinder on here, and I'm going to spin it. And 400 grit is pretty fine. I don't want to take off much material at all. All I want to do is smooth it up a little bit, and that is about it. So take out any burrs or any high points that are in there, and then the next thing I'll do, pardon my arm, is I'm going to change out the nipples for these Slix Shot nipples. And I know I've showed you these before, but pull one out, and you can see that they are drilled at the top to vent some of that blowback gas, and they also have a different shaped fire chamber than the factory nipples. And what that'll do is it will allow us not to get what I call cap sucking, the cap pushed back into the hammer after firing, and then you cock the hammer and it drops in the action and it binds everything up. The other thing it'll let us do is it should allow us to use a lighter mainspring and still be able to set off the charge and not get the caps coming back off. So I'm just going to take the nipple wrench, screw those back in, and then I'm going to put the cylinder aside and we'll be done with it. I know I've mentioned this quite a few times, but when I'm replacing nipples, whether it's to put new nipples on or when I'm cleaning the gun, I lubricate the threads with an anti-seize compound. And if you do that, it'll make your life a lot more pleasant. And I use this Birchwood Casey choke tube lube. Though lots of stuff will work. You could use actual anti-seize or Phil Woods bearing grease, or quite a few things. But you want to get a layer of thin grease on here, and that will keep any corrosion from binding up the threads, and it'll make it a lot easier to get them out later when they're fouled. So I'm just going to put them all in and put this aside. Well, now I've broken the barrel assembly down to its constituent parts, and there's not a whole lot to do here, but I think I can show you. I don't know how well it'll show up. There's some slight scratching in here. When I move the rammer inside of its channel, it moves freely, but I can feel a little bit of friction. So I'm not going to do much, but once again, we're going to take our sandpaper on the dowel, and I'm just going to work that over a little bit. And I'm just trying to take off any of those high spots. And that's all I want to do. So that's the first thing we're going to do on the barrel. Now I've got the rammer secured in a padded vice jaw, and I've got some 400 grit emery cloth. And I'm just going to run over that. Okay, now I'm going to cold blue this part later, but we got it nice and slick now. Okay, I've also got some binding between these pieces, and the way I'm going to deal with that is, once again, I took my double-sided tape, and I took this old lawnmower wrench, but any piece of steel that's about the right thickness will do. So I put double-sided tape on here, and then I took my emery cloth, and I'm using 400 grit, and I just attached that. And now I'm going to back that up a little bit. There we go. Alright, so now I'm just going to smooth out the insides of this fork. And I'll do both sides of it. And I'm just trying to get the burrs off. No major reshaping. I got a lot of machine marks in there. I'm not going to try to get them all out. I'm just going to try to smooth them out. Alright, so the result is that this now moves much easier. And for the last thing on the barrel, I put a new piece of tape on the stick. And I'm just going to get in here, and I'm going to clean this up. Alright, I applied some cold blue to the rammer, a little of this perma blue, and worked it in, and now the barrel assembly is done. Everything works very smoothly. So I can put this aside, and we can move on to the main event. In part 2 of this series, I'll be smoothing out the internals of the frame, and I'll be smoothing out the action parts and changing out some springs.